Hello and welcome to our webcast. I'm Amy Pendergrass with Moss Adams, and I'm going to get us started for today's session, How to Attract and Retain Talent in the Built World. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief housekeeping video.
Welcome, and thanks for joining. We're pleased to present our continuing professional education webcast series. Before we begin, please keep the following in mind. You can customize how you view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top right of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons that relate to a different aspect of our session. You can download a PDF of today's slides from the Slide Deck and Handouts widget. You can ask questions by typing in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. Today's session offers 1 CPE credit. To receive credit, you must meet the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy requirements. You must attend at least 50 minutes of the session and respond to at least 75% of polling questions. To participate in the polls, please check the button next to your answer within the slide window and click Submit. We'll track your progress and alert you when you've earned CPE credit. You can then click the certificate icon in the CPE Progress widget and download your CPE certificate. Don't worry if you can't download your CPE certificate today. We'll email you a copy in 2 weeks. If attending this webcast in a group, you must complete our group CPE attendance sheet, available in our Slide Deck and Handouts widget to receive credit. Please have all group members sign it and send only 1 sheet per group. CPE credit can only be awarded to participants registered as themselves and isn't available for participants who view the on-demand version. This presentation is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
All right, this is the 4th and final session of our virtual 2022 Building Opportunity Conference. If you missed any of the sessions, you can view them on demand at the link provided in your console. And now I would like to hand it off to today's moderator, Elaine Ervin, partner in construction, real estate, professional service, restaurant, and hospitality national practice leader at Moss Adams. Elaine, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy, and thank you all for joining us today. You know, this is a topic, the whole workforce shortage, talent shortage, retention thoughts around how do we keep people within our businesses. It's a hot topic, and I know that my inbox is swarmed with emails every day with articles or periodicals that have thoughts around this very issue and should you work from home, virtual, all the options and everything around this. So I'm really, really excited about today's panel because they come from 3 different types of industries that all have their very own challenges around that. And so I'm going to let each of the panelists introduce themselves, give you a little bit of the background about the company they work for and themselves. And so I'm going to go left to right. I'm going to start with Dave Williams. Good morning, Dave.
Great. Thank you, Elaine. Good morning. I'm Dave Williams. I work at a company called Columbia Hospitality. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. Just to give you a little background on Columbia, we're a hospitality management company, so we manage hotels, conference centers, golf courses, high-end residential condos. We're primarily in the West. We cover 12 states. We have about 3,800 part-time and full-time team members in our what we call our support corporate office. There's about 120 full-time team members, and so we have lots of challenges between customer-facing folks that have to come to a hotel or to a conference center or to a golf course every single day, and we also have folks that can work virtually because they may work in marketing or accounting or some other discipline. So hopefully what we have to say today will help some of you, and I guess that's all for now.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Jane, I'll let you go next.
Great. Thanks, Elaine. And good morning, everybody. I am Jane Mounsey. I'm the HR director at GLY Construction here in the Seattle area. We are a local general commercial construction firm, and we're one of the largest local firms here in the Northwest. We have a very unique makeup of our workforce, which includes salaried staff, including engineers, managers, and business services. But actually, the majority of our population, of our employees, are craft workers, those who belong to trade unions and who self-perform the work that we put in place in the Northwest. And we've got a pretty broad portfolio of projects, but again, it's primarily commercial, high-tech, hospital, Class A, commercial high-rise, et cetera. So I'm excited to be here and can't wait to share more about GLY and our particular challenges and successes with all of you. Thanks, Elaine.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. We're glad you're here. And Seth, I'll turn it to you.
All right. Thanks, Elaine. Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here. Seth Kemper, the Senior Vice President, Finance and Operations for Stockbridge Capital Group's platform business. We're a real estate investment firm managing equity investments on behalf of U.S. and foreign institutional investors with approximately $33 billion of assets under management across the risk spectrum, across the major real estate investment food groups. Heavy focus in industrial and residential, some commercial and very little retail. We're headquartered in San Francisco. We also have offices in Atlanta and Chicago. We're approximately 152 full-time employees. Prior to joining Stockbridge, I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers for 13 years, working in their San Francisco, London, and Cleveland offices, focusing primarily on real estate clients. So happy to be here, excited to get started.
Wonderful. Thank you to all three of you. I'm looking forward to the conversation that we have today. And so before we start off with our first question, we'll start with the polling question. So Amy, I'll let you pull that up.
All right. So here is the first polling question. They are located right on the slide, so please make sure you have your slide window open as well. The first question is, what workforce challenge has impacted your company the most over the last 2 years? A, attracting talent, B, retaining talent, C, wage increases, D, all of the above, or E, none of the above. So we will give you a few moments to respond. You will need to click the button next to the answer you choose and make sure you hit the submit button. And it looks like everyone's responding pretty quickly, so we'll just do another 5 seconds here. All right, here are the results.
Well, that's pretty telling. The D, that doesn't surprise me that the majority of our office, 56% of our audience, is experiencing all of the above. So wage increase, retaining talent, and attracting talent, which leads us into our very first question for the panel, because what we want to talk about are the current talent constraints. And one of the things that I love about this talent panel is, like I said previously, is that they have differing issues. So there's unique labor challenges that affect different industries. So what talent challenges have you faced over the last 2 years? And maybe you can touch a bit on, what's unique to your industry as compared to others. So I will start with Jane.
Terrific. Thanks, Elaine. Well, I'm not surprised. Here at GLY and in the Northwest, we're facing all of these same challenges. Definitely, I'm in the D box there for sure. And I think commercial construction, what's unique about our industry is, again, most of us are what are known as self-performing general contractors, meaning that we have craft workers putting the work in place on behalf of our company. They're not subcontracted out. And the period of COVID was a real challenge for getting our craft workers not only into the funnel of the workforce development pipeline, but then also staying with the work. Obviously, big parts of our industry and economics all over the country were shutting down or going remote, and we can't build buildings remotely, but folks were nervous. And so that was definitely a challenge on getting craft workers in the field to actually build the buildings. From the salaried side or engineering and management side, the biggest challenge we faced there were people reevaluating their lives, their personal lives, their careers. Did they want to stay in construction? Did they want to stay in Seattle? And the impact of the Great Resignation on us here at GLY was mostly due to folks who were raised in different parts of the country, moved to Seattle for their career, their education, whatever reason, and decided to return back to those places of origin, or they left the construction industry entirely. We also had a lot of volatility with our labor due to strikes, and there were a lot of strikes during COVID. One in particular, a very long 6-month Teamster strike, prevented us from receiving the materials we need to build, and those layoffs resulted again in lots of craft workers leaving the construction industry. So I'd be interested, Dave, in hearing what you have to say on the hospitality side.
Yeah, absolutely. In the last 2 years, we had COVID, and then we had Great Resignation. And for us, Great Resignation was certainly some of our office workers, but it was also a lot of servers, housekeepers, and at the same time, we manage a whole bunch of what I would call unique, high-end boutique hotels, not the limited service kind. And so business bounced back really quick because people wanted to travel to the ocean or to the mountains or, to these resorts. And all of a sudden, we didn't have the staff to provide the same level of service, or in some cases, in a lot of our restaurants, we couldn't open, full time, right? And so we had to get very systematic about, okay, what makes sense, both operationally and economically in terms of, staffing I'll use a restaurant as an example, and what meal periods aren't that important. Right? You used to always be open all the time, and now we've got to be really smart about this and bring it back. And the most of that challenge wasn't, we used economics as part of it, but a lot of it was just we could not find the labor, and we're still struggling with that. And then so many people have left that industry, and like you said, Jane, decided to move back to wherever they came, right? They start to change sort of their value equation is what we're seeing, which has led us to rethink, what is our offerings to employees. But, that's in our, world, but I would, it'd be interesting to hear from Seth and, because that's a whole different dynamic.
Yeah, Dave, that makes a lot of sense. I think a little different for our firm compared to, I think, you and Jane's firms is we were predominantly a lot of our work we were able to convert to remote. We had a pretty, I think we were pretty pleased with the success level of the hybrid environment that was kind of forced upon everybody. And the 2 years, the initial quarter of COVID was a little slow, but after that, the 2 years after that were kind of a hyper growth period, and we were able to execute on a lot of initiatives on a fully remote basis, which we were quite pleased with. But I think that what I've talked to a lot of people about is that was like a 2-year thesis in the success of remote work, which was a hurdle when actually trying to bring people back in the office, because you just had a 2-year period of success and there was no driving force, or proof you could say you have to be in office to do your work. So I think we've been much slower to get people back in the office, and I think a lot of people have adapted to that hybrid work environment and actually prefer that. So during COVID, we were extremely busy. I think the Great Resignation and coming out of COVID, the constraints and that period of economic growth has just really lowered the quantity of qualified individuals in the talent pool, which has been a constraint from a hiring perspective. I think prior to COVID, when I had open positions, I was used to having 3, 4, 5 candidates, usually all pretty strong, and needing to whittle that down to 2 or 3 very capable candidates. And over the last probably 6 to 9 months, I've had to get accustomed to 1 very qualified candidate, or maybe 2. Challenges the confidence you have in some of your hiring decisions when you don't get to look at several candidates. And then I think the other challenge is adapting to the hybrid work and kind of getting that in-person engagement and building that social capital that we spent over 2 years remote, and getting people back engaged and socializing and working well together. I think that's been the other challenge over the past couple of years for our business.
Yeah, Seth, you brought up something really kind of valuable there that I want to think about a little bit more, or at least chat about a little bit more, because when you think you're more remote, and you brought up the challenge of, I guess, a bit of the office culture or the business culture, as well as onboarding and training. What are your thoughts around that? I mean, as far as, because I know for us, that's a big constraint, and I would love your thoughts, especially since you tend to be a little bit more on the remote side.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been a challenge and an adaptation. I've been in the office 5 days a week since, other than the initial 2 week or month to slow the spread. I'm a little unique, and I prefer to be in the office every day. We're bringing our teams back in now 2 or 3 days a week, more on a team by team basis, and being more flexible for folks. But I think it was a lot more difficult to build rapport. I hired a couple individuals on a fully remote basis, and didn't meet them in person for over 6 months, 9 months. And so just building that rapport and having that connection, knowing in times of stress or busy times where you can push or where you can ask, and not having as good of appreciation as you would have had for their social life, their family life, them as an individual. It was definitely challenging as a manager, and as an employer, of feeling less comfortable with your people that have been onboarded on a remote basis. But I think that's why I think that there was some, I think a lot of people do see the value, and a lot of the teams did like coming back a couple days a week. They like seeing people in person. They like having the sidebar conversations that'll, can happen more organically in person. And so, I think people are happy to be back on a limited basis. I haven't seen a lot of people want to be in 5 days a week or even 4 days a week.
Yeah, no, I think that, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to say that's been a big challenge for us, because even though we're in the hospitality industry, we've sort of hit this hyper growth mode. And so it was easy during COVID because you had worked with everyone. You had worked in the offices with all these folks. It's when you start to onboard new team members, new employees that just want to work remote, and you've built no culture with them. They don't understand the culture of your company. They don't understand the relationship building yet. And so that's been a big challenge for us. When it was the same folks and we were all kind of banding together and you built the relationship, it was fine. You could stay in touch with them. But, as this new wave of hirees comes in, it's just a challenge, and you've got to, at least what we've done is we've, we're very much in the, let's just say soft skills. We're good at soft skills. And so we incent people to come in, right? We gave them a gas allowance to come in, for those that were driving. We offer them meals 3 days a week if they come in those 3 days a week. We, have these planned happy hours, etc. Because there's just a subset of folks that would rather work from home all the time, and which is fine, but then you've got to work extra hard to make sure they are connected to the company. So.
Any other thoughts?
You're a hybrid like me.
Yeah, you are.
Were you asking me that question?
Yeah, or more, just your thoughts
Yeah.
around that before we jump to the next section.
Sure. I think just from a solutions mindset, we, while we were remote, and we do still have some remote workers, we did a ton of social stuff. I know it sounds weird, but on Zoom, and had events and cocktail parties and learning and development opportunities. So we worked extra hard to make sure that we were having engaging programming, even though it was virtual. We were all of our faces were up there in the gallery. So that was an investment that we made. And then as we moved out of the lockdown phase, again, we had to have all of our workers on the job sites. And for those of us in management and business services, we made a similar commitment to be here in unity and solidarity with our folks who are out there swinging the hammers every single day. And getting that engagement for us has really been a focus on development and growth. And that's the value proposition that keeps people at GLY if they haven't decided to leave industry or leave the area. And that's always been a core value of ours. And I really encourage all of you out there to think about what are you doing to make sure they understand they have a future with you. And what does that what does that look like tangibly in terms of actual learning, development, mentoring opportunities? It's hard when we're just focused on getting through the current economy and these challenges with a limited workforce. But again, this goes back to that retention piece. You've got them, you've got to do everything you can to keep them. And what they care about is, do you care about them and do you care about their future? That approach and that attitude has worked pretty well for us.
Yeah, we had that. We had the same thing. We actually, during sort of COVID or right before COVID and through COVID, we've expanded this group. We've created a whole learning and development team, and to build out a robust virtual academy for, because we have such a diverse workforce, and to build out those courses online and then deliver those out to connect people, so that it is a differentiator, and it can be done for anyone, anywhere. And so, but that was, as a CFO, I'm looking at all this, for lack of a better word, all this overhead of costs that we're adding, but there's a reason for it, and an important one. So that was one of the things we took very seriously.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Although the cost of hiring and training is probably hopefully more than the cost of the different programs that you've employed. Yeah. So we're going to go to our next polling question. So Amy, I'll let you pull that up.
All right, the second question is, what is your organization's workforce arrangement? A, all employees are in office. B, all employees work virtually. Or C, we have a hybrid model. And then also just a reminder that if you would like to receive CPE credit for today's webcast, you will need to respond to at least 3 of the 4 polling questions. Oh, let me pull that back up here.
There's a question that came in that I want to throw out, and anyone can answer it, but this came in, and it's, how did you change your onboarding or new employee training program to account for remote folks? I'll let, I don't know if...
yeah, I can, I'll
want to jump in, Dave? That'd be great.
Well, one of the things, at least in accounting and finance, and we do it in our, non-customer facing, obviously our customer facing, they have to be on site, but in our non-customer facing, one of the things we've done, and we've hired a lot of remote, and we're based in Seattle, and I have a team in the Philippines, I have people in Texas and Arkansas and Iowa. We just hired somebody in Florida, and we require them for the first 3 months to come into our office and spend 3 days a week, every other week for the first 3 months. And we pay for their flights and pay for their housing to do so, because we feel like otherwise they are not going to know the company and they're not going to be connected. And we want to make sure that we get that connection going. So that's one of the things we do in hybrid, which has been it's really helped because there is a team, in our Seattle office, and it's fairly large, and those remote workers need to connect. So.
All right, Amy, do you have the polling results? Thank you, Dave.
Yes. There you go.
All right, not surprising that 70% of the individuals on the call have a hybrid model. So not surprising. It's all employees in the office. I always, would love to hear more about their business and how that's working. But we'll go on to the very next section that we're going to be talking about. And so the next section is really around, we're going to be focusing on talent recruitment strategies. And so what strategies have you employed to find talent? So do you do this in-house? Do you use external sources? What other resources do you use? But would love to, well, I think we'll start with you, Seth, as to what resources and what are your recruitment strategies?
We use all of the above. We've had great success with recruiting firms. With one caveat, I think some of the more boutique, personal connection recruiting firms where you have a relationship and they know your company culture in business is quite successful. I think in our accounting and finance team, it's probably 95%. Myself included, have been recruited by one particular recruiting firm. So they really know us, they know our culture. They tend to do a good job of, providing candidates that they think would be a good fit. And we've had success there, where early at Stockbridge, I did use a different recruiting firm that was more of a wholesale approach. They gave us a large quantity of candidates, most of which weren't qualified. And even after we ended up hiring one, it wasn't a success story. But generally, we like the recruiting firms. If they're specialized in your industry or your market, they tend to be better. The other, and that was kind of pre-COVID, still use the recruiting firms, but now leveraging personal networks. My last few hires have been, through former connections, leveraging alumni associations. And then we've also rolled out an intern program just to try to start that process earlier in the career, to identify people, given that the competition for quality is higher than I've ever seen it. So you've got to be creative in your approach. We'd love to know what Jane sees from her hat in HR.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. And everything you say really resonates with me. And actually, I have a saying, which is recruiting is the BD, or the business development, of human resources, of HR. Recruiting is the BD of HR. Leveraging relationships is key. And that's also part of our business strategy overall in acquiring and executing work in the marketplace. So having an awesome reputation is super important, never resting on our laurels, and being highly, highly engaged in the community and in the industry in our area. That's everything. And so when people hear, oh, GLY is looking for a project engineer, or GLY is looking for more carpenters, there's a reaction that people in this marketplace who know about us have, and we're very, very grateful, and we've worked very hard for that reputation. I would say that internship programs, relationships with the universities is also really critical for that funnel of getting young talent in the door, and that's worked well for us. Again, these are pretty high touch approaches and strategies, and sometimes the numbers can feel small, but it gains this what I call critical mass, where there's just so many people that are engaged in the process, know about GLY, want to come to GLY, or want to recommend GLY. We've sort of gotten to that critical mass, and we're just trying to feed that machine. I would say for those participants who have what I call frontline workers, which I know Dave does as well, we partner with our trade unions. We partner with community organizations that provide pre-apprenticeship training and support, particularly to women and people of color, which is a big priority for us in our business, is to attract and support and include those types of folks. So those relationships are super important. A great example for those of you who are interested is look up an organization called ANEW. That's ANEW. They're a world-class pre-apprenticeship service here in the greater Seattle area. And I think their model could be replicated in many different markets, and also a model that could be replicated for lots of other pre-employment training, particularly for underserved communities. So those are some of the strategies we've employed. Oh, and also, yes, we do do take advantage of a few boutique recruitment firms, staffing partners of ours. And again, we do not hire on a commodity basis. Those are trusted relationships, and they represent us well out there in the talent market.
Dave,
Seth,
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're, because of our sort of spread around mostly the West, but, across the country, we take every approach, it seems like. When 2 years ago, we had one internal recruiter. Now we have 5. We do use, like Jane and Seth, we do for certain positions, managerial positions, we'll look at, specific recruiting firms. But we also, we do for, mass hiring, we go to specific universities that have programs in our in the hospitality world, and we do career fairs, and because those are spread out all over the country, and it's it's just a constant challenge. I mean, one of the things we pay a lot of money to LinkedIn now so that we can internally go aggressively just find people, right, instead of just posting an ad and hoping that people come to us. We're trying to take a more aggressive approach right now, and it's been a challenge I'm sure for everyone, the last 2 years. I do think it will swing back, but it to find, I think Seth mentioned it, you used to be able to post and get a handful of qualified candidates that you would decide on. Now, I know we're getting no qualified candidates, and they want 20% more than what we thought was the position. So that is a challenge, and that's what has led us to look, in other areas of the country and the globe.
So to expand upon this a little bit, because I know that we've received 3 questions so far relating to this, and I think this is something really good for us to address, and as we're talking about this topic today. And so it's the incorporation of DE&I programs into your talent recruitment strategy. And like I said, there's 3 questions related to that. And so Jane, I'll let you start off on that broad subject and what you're doing around that with recruiting.
Terrific. Yeah, I was hoping, I saw that come through the chat, and I'm really glad we're getting a chance to address it because it's obviously incredibly important. There was also a question about where do you find pre-apprenticeship programs. So I'm just going to start on that craft side, on that frontline worker side, which is we are hyper-focused on pre-apprenticeship programs that serve women and people of color in our larger community. And again, ANEW is a great model, business model, if there's somebody like some program like that in your particular marketplaces. And that's really been our sole investment as it relates to the pipeline, or the funnel, as I should say, for workforce development. That is our biggest investment, hands down. For the salary, the engineering, management, and business services side, we have the same focus and the same metrics around increasing women and people of color. And the way we're going about that is seeking out relationships with, for example, minority student or women student organizations at the colleges where we have relationships, and continuing to have a priority and a preference for bringing in interns who are women and people of color, prioritizing those hires, and then encouraging them to reach out to their networks. And again, what you're trying to achieve here is this critical mass of a knowledge of and a reputation that your company has in the marketplace that just builds upon itself. So that's worked well for us.
Yeah, for us, we embarked on a DEI corporate strategy maybe a year and a half ago. It's headed by one of our vice presidents. And initially, because we're so spread out, was awareness, right? And, we do a DEI spotlight each month, and we post all this information, and it goes out to each one of our properties so that the teams can engage, in that and the understanding, because we have a diverse population. I think our overall we're 50+%. I think we're 52% women and 40% minority or people of color in our population, and so it is something that we're always looking to expand on, and it's always a discussion item. How do we improve this? Our overall DEI strategy.
Seth, do you have anything you want to add before we move on?
Segments is extremely important. It's a huge focus of our firm, and I should have mentioned this when I was discussing our internship program. It's maybe not exclusively, but predominantly targeted to try to engage with people of color, women, and other underrepresented communities to try to start that engagement early, and really, in addition to the internship program, really establish a relationship of mentoring, where we're providing kind of a continuous, relationship and hopefully some guidance and support throughout, after the internship and through, kind of into the full-time workforce. It's been hugely successful for us.
Yeah, thank you for that input. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the only other thing I would offer there, it's also extremely important for potential candidates, and I forget, maybe it was a year ago. It was the first time I remembered in an interview, other than the standard interview questions, what's your favorite part about working here, things like that. It was very directive. What are some of your diversity issues? What's your culture of inclusivity? Can you speak to some of those things? And it caught me off guard because it was the first time I'd fielded it as an interviewer. And so it's very important, and it's key in attracting talent. And so you should have programs in place, and the people are very interested in that social aspect of it, not just the monetary or compensative side of employment. So it's very important.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it is very important. Thank you for your insight on that. I think that's a very important topic, and your info is very, very helpful. So Amy will go to the next polling question before we dive into our next section.
All right, our third polling question is, what retention strategies do you employ to address labor challenges? A, training and development, B, increased benefits, C, compensation increases, D, flexible work arrangements, or E, all of the above, or F, none of the above. And then also, for those of you asking, we are recording this webcast so you can share with others. The answer is yes, and we will send that out tomorrow to all participants, so just keep an eye out for that email.
Excellent, thank you. Well, while we're waiting for the answers really quick, there is one question on thoughts on geographical based pay. Have any of you encountered any issues around that?
No, the folks that we've hired in different geographies and those that are aware of Seattle has gotten very expensive. It's similar to Seth down in San Francisco now. So we, where we have the ability to hire remote workers, it is different pay sometimes. We're getting quality candidates that don't want the sort of premium of a Seattle or a San Francisco or a New York if they're in Texas or they're in some other part of the country. And that, that premium that we were paying in Seattle is one of the reasons that, and just finding talent in general is one of the reasons why we've gone and looked at other areas.
All right. Well, this once again is not overly surprising that all of the above was the favored answer at 58%, because all of us, I would believe, have felt any of the top four items throughout COVID and probably still at this given point in time, which is going to tee us up for our very next section. And our next section is really going to be discussing retention strategies. And so my question is, what strategies have you employed to retain your talent? And then how often do you assess your retention strategy? So do you have an overall workforce strategy? And how often do you assess it, especially with changing market challenges? So Seth, I think I'm going to start with you with this question.
Yeah, retention strategies, I'd say, how often do we evaluate it? I'd say informally, every week, every day, based on interactions with the team. I think we've done a huge focus of late of really trying to build that engagement again. And that's part from bringing people back into the office, but providing free lunches. We've done a higher volume of team events, whether it's outings, in office, things like that, to try to really drive, the stickiness of our firm. Other than that, to just try to really focus on the in-person engagement, we're continually adapting and enhancing our benefits. So we do surveys a couple times a year, feedback from staff on what benefits work or attractive. We've rolled out Gym Pass, was a big one that came up in the last year from a lot of the younger folks. Increased HSA or FSA contributions, different flexible options like that. So kind of reacting or trying to be proactive in designing our programs to meet what people want continually, I'd say is what we're focusing on. And then talking to peers, getting data from recruiting firms on the competitiveness of our all-around compensation package and making sure it's in line with where we want to be.
Jane, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, our retention strategy as it relates to compensation and benefits is to meet market. So we do quite a bit of work with partners who provide us with good data on where the market is in terms of base salaries, in terms of benefits. Obviously, we are suffering because there are companies out there that are willing to pay what I call mercenary salaries to get people to come to their companies. And we refuse to do that because it's not fair to the current employees who are engaged, productive, performing, and have a great future here at GLY. So we're very sensitive to what we call the apple cart, and we don't want to upset it here, but we want to be competitive and, again, meet the market. I would say our number one focus, our number one strategy is to be a place, and I've said this before during this time together, is it's all about development. People have great opportunities here. We work very hard to pay close attention. Every single individual who's in our performance system, we're watching them closely. We're having lots of conversations. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What do you want your career to look like at GLY? And we'll remove every obstacle we can and provide every opportunity we can for them to achieve those aspirations over time. And that's been a real game changer for us. It's a big investment. But in my 15 years here at GLY, there's never been a hesitancy to fund those training and development programs and opportunities for folks. It's a big priority. How about you, Dave? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, I agree with both Seth and Jane on this. There are always going to be people that want to sort of job hop. So the best thing you can do is, make sure that you retain the people you have, right? And so you've got to give them, and sometimes it's a little bit more money, or it's, to make sure they're at market. But mostly for those, long-term loyal employees, they want opportunity. And so we're fortunate enough that we've grown enough to provide different opportunities, right? And it's really, we're required quarterly to sit down with each of our team members and go through a career development plan. And it's simple, it's a one-pager, but it's having those conversations so that they're aware that you're aware that you're there to help them in their development. And I always have the conversation that it doesn't, I'm here to help you not just as an employer, but as a person that just wants you to develop. And if they truly feel that, we had a person who was a accounting manager leave, take a controller position, and had great conversations. We were very close with him. Told him that it looked like a good opportunity. He should go leave and take that. And then 2 years later, he came back, and now he's a senior director of finance, and is so thankful that we always left that door open, and we were always concerned about him as a person and his career, not just working here. So I think that personal touch and building those relationships helps. You obviously have to have robust benefits and market or close to market compensation. If you don't have that, you're not going to ever be, you're always going to have a problem. But it's those differentiating in that relationship, I think, that really matters for a lot of people.
And if you don't mind, I'm just going to add on to that. The other big investment we make is in our leadership. And we've got, we have all of our folks who have direct reports. We call them EDGE leaders. That stands for Employee Development, Growth, and Engagement. They are our EDGE leaders, and we invest a ton in them as well. So making sure that connection, that leadership, that mentoring, that singular focus on the individual, that doesn't happen by accident. That happens because you invest in those leaders as well, because we can't be everywhere, right? We have to really rely on our frontline leadership to represent the face of GLY to folks that want to have those long-term career aspiration conversations. So that's worked well for us too.
Yeah, what I find interesting, especially about the comments that I have been hearing is around this, is there's the compensation component, but there's even more importantly, I guess, a cultural component, which includes, that development, the career focus, this is what we can accomplish. But that cultural component that you hit upon, Jane, having leadership being actively involved so that it permeates throughout the entire company versus just at certain levels or just with certain individuals. And I assume, I know we found that during COVID that you had to put a great deal of energy into that because of the lack of the day-to-day contact. But, hopefully that's becoming a little bit easier as we ease out of it a bit, I would hope. Any other thoughts? All right. So we are going to jump to our last polling question before we get the insights as to what others can do if they're facing the same issue. So Amy, I'll let you take it away.
All right, our last polling question is, how often do you assess your overall workforce strategy? A, yearly, B, biannually, C, quarterly, or D, monthly? And once you've completed all of your CPE requirements, you can download a PDF of your certificate from the CPE progress window in your console.
While this is going on, there is a really interesting question in here that has come in, and I think this is another very important, pertinent question that I'm going to throw out. It says, I've heard that employees are more likely to stay in jobs that offer high quality mental health resources. What are you doing to invest in the mental health of your employees? And I know part of this in the construction world, that is a very important initiative, both locally, nationally. So maybe, Jane, I will start with you and we can move on. But I think that's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Mental health is a huge issue in the construction industry. We have one of the highest rates of suicide for any profession in the U.S., and that's a horrible statistic, and we're fighting it every day. And how we do that, we partner with our benefit providers for mental health services, similar to an employee assistance program, but ours is kind of an EAP on steroids. We also have, we offer mental health first aid certification to our employees. We also work with our healthcare carriers to make sure that, they're providing great mental health services and resources to our employees who are participants in that plan. And we partner with our trade unions to make sure that their health and welfare trusts also have robust mental health resources. So, and we talk about it all the time. Psychological safety is on par with physical safety at GLY, and we discuss that in safety talks, toolbox talks. We are big participants in May Mental Health Awareness Month. That's a great opportunity to get your message out, but you have to follow up with it. It has to be a 12-month-a-year conversation that is consistently going on. And it's been amazing. We've been on this journey specifically since COVID, and it hasn't really surprised me, but to see people in construction go, well, it's about time that we're paying attention to our psychological safety, both from a mental health wellness perspective, and also from an inclusion perspective, right? So psychological safety is a result of feeling included in the organization as well. So that's been our approach, and we've got a long way to go, but we're very committed.
That's great. Great. We because we have a lot of part-time workers that don't qualify for our full benefits. Mm-hmm. We partnered with a company called Talkspace that provides I think you get 2 a month that you can call a mental health professional and have a 30-minute session, and then if you need more than that, you can pay for it. But it's just to offer that benefit for our entire population, so that they have somewhere to turn. And we try to promote that, and it's been successful, and it's not expensive as an employer, and it's something that you don't always think about. I mean, obviously Jane does in her industry, and we do in ours too, but it is critically important. So
thank you. It is a very, very important issue, so I appreciate your responses to that question. And so the overall workforce strategy, it appears like, company or the individuals here address it primarily on an annual basis, although others are addressing it more frequently. We should have probably added a daily, like I believe it was Seth who said you do it on a daily basis. So I think we were remiss about adding an item E in there as well. So in order to close out this session, what I really would like each of you to share is, do you have any suggestions or takeaways that you want to mention to the audience as they venture back to work and think about their talent, their recruiting, their strategies, and what they can do within their company to continue to improve it? So I guess, Dave, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you everybody who's still stayed on and is listening. For us, it's flexibility, and it's flexibility in mindset and how you approach these things. I would have said, 5 years ago, just offer, decent benefits and good pay and everyone just works, right? No, it doesn't work that way. You've got to be flexible, and you've got to think from the employee's perspective, what motivates them. I do think training, I do think providing, what I'll call non-traditional benefits. You have to provide the traditional, but if you can start to look for non-traditional benefits, and then ultimately it's culture. You've got to have a good culture. I mean, people want to stay with a culture. They don't, and those that don't want to stay with a culture, they're probably not good for your culture anyways. And so if you can build that culture, people want to come to that. So there was a question for me specifically that I just wanted to answer. I think it was Lexi that had asked that. The name.
Yeah, could you please?
Pardon me?
I said, yeah, could you please? I was going to make sure you did that.
Yeah, the name of that company is called Talkspace, if it relates to the mental health. So, and I can happily send to Moss Adams the information, and if you want to get that, but that's the name of the company that we use. I'm sure there's lots of them out there, but we found it's a good one. So,
yeah, thank you for that, Seth. What are your parting thoughts?
Yeah, I think I don't want to sound like a broken record. I think I've mentioned it a few times on this call, but to Dave's flexibility, but that engagement, truly engaging with your teams and being present. You have to be genuine and listen, and that's what I think that people will feel, that sense of connection and that culture. You can kind of transmit that throughout an organization. And the last thing I'd say, I used to use this, and I still use this for myself as a barometer of career growth and where I would leave a company or not. And I used to have 3 criteria, and one of them was if I wake up and I dread going to work, I don't like who I work with, I hate the job that I'm doing, that's an indicator to leave. The second one is if a great opportunity came up, just whether it's compensation, role, company you want to work with, that's the second indicator to maybe leave. And the third one is if I stop getting better, if I stop growing, I stop developing my skills, it might be time to leave. And I think for everybody, hopefully on this call, that third one as mentors, as employers, we can really control that we're making people better, that we're investing in people and making sure that aspect of that 3-pronged decision tree isn't met. We can't, I think we can also control the first one and hopefully providing a good environment, a great place to work, market benefits. And the one in the middle, to Jane's point, we can't really perfectly fend off mercenary salaries and hiring opportunities. And to Dave's point of the accounting manager who left for a good opportunity and ultimately came back, you want to encourage it. And that happened on my teams where the opportunity for somebody to leave and grow and further develop was outside of what I could offer them, and I was happy for them and wish them well and hope to stay in touch as a mentor. And there's a few people that I hope I'm as lucky as Dave circle back and rejoin Stockbridge or my team.
That's great. Jane.
I'll try to be very brief because I know we're out of time. But for us, our recruitment and retention strategies are driven by our values. So if you're a values-driven organization and you really think long and hard about how you articulate your values, and then how do those translate into the ways that you show up as an employer, whether you're recruiting or retaining your employees, and ultimately that can become your employment brand. So you couldn't say to me, Jane, my employment brand represents these values. That might give you an opportunity to think about it from that kind of high level perspective. So thank you. It's been a delight to participate.
Well, I want to say thank you to our 3 panelists. You have provided such incredibly valuable insight today, and I hope that the audience has some valuable takeaways for themselves as well. And I also want to thank everyone who attended today. And if you have further questions, don't hesitate to let us know. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Amy.
All right. Thank you, Elaine. And thank you to our panelists for a really great discussion today. And as I mentioned earlier, if you met all CPE requirements, your certificate is available to download now in the CPE progress window. A copy will be emailed within 2 weeks if you have difficulty downloading it now. And then also, if you attended today's presentation in a group and would like to receive CPE credit, you must complete the group attendance sheet found in your console. And finally, here's a link to an online survey for today's presentation. And thank you for joining our webcast, and take care, everyone.